So did you figure out who the Nasarima are? Nasarima is American spelled backwards. So you might take a minute to note what you think Minor meant by shrines, a mouth-right ritual, a bundle of hog hairs, the holy mouth man, and the listener or witch doctor. To me, Minor is commenting on the beauty economy, anxiety about aging, and rituals of youth maintenance. Perhaps this is tied to the ageism we'll discuss later this term when we consider ageism in elder care facilities under COVID. Seeing the strange in the familiar is sometimes how sociologists get their research topics and research questions established, by starting with something in everyday life and then using systematic research methods to examine whether it's connected to larger social patterns affecting massive numbers of people. For example, you might have heard the term emotional labor in the news. It's also been on Twitter and even has its own hashtag that you might want to search. This concept was created by sociologist Arlie Russell Hochschild, who was the first to write about emotions from a sociological perspective rather than a psychological or biological or other perspective. We see here her pivotal book, The Managed Heart. This book is an example of insights that came from seeing the strange in the familiar. Hochschild started thinking about emotions from a pretty young age. Her parents were diplomats, and so she got to see a lot of formal and polite interactions when her parents would host things like dinner parties with important international contacts. Hochschild thought, are these people never sad or angry or tired even? On the surface, these are very mundane and typical exchanges she was witnessing. But she started asking questions about what people were doing with their emotions and why. And she ended up with the concepts of emotion work and emotional labor. And she also founded a new subfield of sociology, the sociology of emotions. You can take entire classes in this now. Just because Hochschild started with personal observation, though, doesn't mean she ended there. Hochschild engaged in systematic research and analysis of the way flight attendants manage their emotions with customers in challenging situations in the air. She was able to make broader abstractions from her data. Hochschild found that the way people were expected to manage their emotions, for example, who was allowed to have a strong or negative emotion, who was expected to identify and attend to the emotions of others, were organized based on social factors like race and class and gender. So what does it mean to see the strange in the familiar under COVID? In this pandemic time, much of the familiar itself has changed, whether we wanted it to or not. COVID has completely changed so much of what society took for granted, so seeing the strange in the familiar has become a lot less challenging recently. Because so many social norms have been changed to protect the public, we are now able to isolate some social norms from our familiar routines and analyze them sociologically. I would like you to reflect on the following questions. What has COVID-19 revealed about what we take for granted in society? And what strange patterns and norms have become more obvious since this outbreak? Like how going to the store to pick up flowers or wine on the way to someone's house used to mean something very different than it does now. Now this would be irresponsible and putting them in danger. Or even things like having a potluck where you share food is now really unacceptable. So what did the potluck mean before? What does it mean now, and what might it mean in the future?